What does extreme wealth actually look like in real life? For most people, money means comfort, security, maybe a nice house and a couple vacations a year, but for the 1%, money means something entirely different. It means private jets, luxury mansions, million-dollar bets, and a lifestyle that most people can barely even imagine. And today we are stepping inside that world because this is the story of how Dan Bilzerian spends his millions. Now, Dan Bilzerian is not your typical millionaire. He is controversial, unpredictable, and unapologetically extravagant, and that is exactly what made him famous. From poker tables to Instagram fame, he built a persona that is larger than life, a lifestyle filled with risk, luxury, and excess. And whether you admire him or question him, one thing is undeniable: his life is anything but ordinary. Daniel Brandon Bilzerian was born into a family that already had money. His father was a Wall Street corporate raider who built significant wealth during his career, and before stepping away, he set up trust funds for both of his sons, which meant Dan had a financial safety net from an early age. But that does not mean his path was simple. He grew up in Tampa, Florida, alongside his brother Adam Bilzerian, and like many young men searching for purpose, Dan initially chose a completely different direction. He entered the Navy SEAL training program, one of the most intense and demanding military training programs in the world, but after multiple attempts he did not complete the program, and that moment changed everything, because from there he shifted his focus toward education, enrolling at the University of Florida, where he studied business and criminology. But even that would not define his future, because Dan Bilzerian's real breakthrough came in a completely different arena, the world of high-stakes poker. In 2009, he played in the World Series of Poker main event, finishing in 180th place, not a winning position but enough to establish himself in the scene. And by 2010 he had already built a reputation, even being voted one of the funniest poker players on social media. But behind the humor and personality was something much bigger, a player willing to take massive risks, and those risks would define his entire lifestyle. Over the years, Dan claimed to have won staggering amounts of money, including over $10.8 million in a single night and around $50 million in 1 year, numbers that most people cannot even process. He also claimed that the most he ever lost in one session was $3.6 million. Just imagine that for a second, losing millions in a single night and still coming back to play again. That is not just gambling, that is a completely different mindset, a level of risk tolerance that very few people in the world possess. But poker was just the beginning, because Dan Bilzerian quickly realized that attention could be just as valuable as money, and that is when social media changed everything. With tens of millions of followers on Instagram, his lifestyle became content and his content became business. Luxury cars, private jets, yachts, parties, everything was documented, everything was amplified, and everything turned into income through brand deals, sponsorships, and promotions. His image became a brand, and that brand started generating millions. But what makes Dan Bilzerian truly stand out is not just how he makes money, it is how he spends it, because his spending is just as extreme as his lifestyle. He has openly said that he struggles to even define his most luxurious experience, because for him extravagance is normal. He once spent several $1 million on a 2-week vacation, just a vacation, where he rented a 300-foot yacht floating luxury surrounded by ocean staff, entertainment, and complete privacy. For most people that would be a once-in-a-lifetime dream. For Dan it was just another summer. And then there are the watches. Dan Bilzerian is known for collecting some of the most expensive timepieces in the world, including brands like Richard Mille and Audemars Piguet. These are not just watches, they are statements, pieces that can cost hundreds of thousands or even millions, and for him they are just part of the lifestyle. Cars are another obsession, because when you have that level of wealth, you do not just buy a car, you build a collection. Supercars, hypercars, rare models, machines designed for speed, power, and attention, and of course they fit perfectly into the image he has created. But perhaps the most defining part of his lifestyle is his real estate, because Dan Bilzerian does not just live in houses, he lives in experiences. He splits his time between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, two cities known for excess and entertainment. His Las Vegas property alone was purchased for over $5,100,000, a luxury home designed for comfort and privacy. But that is just one piece of the puzzle. His Los Angeles lifestyle takes things to another level entirely. Moving from Hollywood Hills to Billionaire, he stepped into a world of ultra-luxury. His mansion has been listed at around $90 million, but some estimates suggest it could be worth closer to $250 million. And when you see what is inside, that number starts to make sense. We are talking about a 38,000 square foot property, 12 bedrooms, 21 bathrooms, a rooftop helicopter pad, and an 85-foot infinity pool. This is not just a house, this is a private resort, a place designed not just to live but to impress, to entertain, to dominate attention. And that is really what Dan Bilzerian's lifestyle is all about: attention, power, and freedom. He represents a version of wealth that is bold, unapologetic, and sometimes controversial, a life where limits do not seem to exist, where risks are taken without hesitation, and where money is not just spent, it is displayed. But at the same time, it raises a question: would you actually want to live like this? Because while the lifestyle looks incredible on the surface, it also comes with pressure, risk, and constant scrutiny. So the real question is not just how Dan Bilzerian spends his millions, it is whether that kind of life is truly worth it, or if it is simply a different kind of game, one where the stakes are always high and the spotlight never turns off. And that is the world of Dan Bilzerian, a life built on risk, fueled by money, and defined by luxury. And then there is the next level of his lifestyle, because the house itself is only part of the story. What really makes it unbelievable is what is inside. Dan Bilzerian does not just own a mansion, he owns an entire entertainment ecosystem. His property includes a fleet of some of the rarest cars in the world with a combined value of over $30 million, and that is just the beginning. The home itself is built across 4 massive levels, with the lowest level designed entirely for entertainment, a 12,000 square foot space dedicated to pure luxury and experience. Inside that space you will find a 4-lane bowling alley, a 40-seat private movie theater, and a massive near 30-foot television hidden behind one of the home's 3 fully stocked bars. Everything in this house is designed to impress, to entertain, and to create an atmosphere that feels more like a luxury resort than a personal residence. And then there are the design details: sliding glass walls that completely open up, creating a seamless indoor-outdoor living experience with at least 6 different outdoor lounge areas, each designed for relaxation, parties, or simply enjoying the view. There is even a video wall mounted on a hydraulic lift which allows you to watch content while sitting inside the pool. Just imagine that, watching a full-screen display while floating in an infinity pool overlooking the city. Inside the house, 2 private elevators move between floors, and 3 separate kitchens keep everything running smoothly, because a property of this scale requires more than just luxury, it requires function and constant operation. But if there is one thing that truly defines Dan Bilzerian's lifestyle, it is his car collection, because this is where things get serious. This is not just a collection, this is a statement, a garage that would make even the most hardcore car enthusiast stop and stare. At the center of it all is a Lamborghini Aventador, a white supercar with black rims valued at around $390,000, a machine built for speed, attention, and pure adrenaline. But that is just one piece, because Dan also owns a 1965 Shelby Cobra, a classic icon in the automotive world, worth over $2 million, a car that represents history, rarity, and timeless design. And then of course you cannot talk about luxury without mentioning Rolls-Royce. Dan owns a white Rolls-Royce Ghost with a base price of around $250,000, a car that defines comfort and prestige. But Dan does not stop at traditional luxury. He also owns a Mercedes-Benz Brabus G63 a rare and highly modified vehicle that was only available for a short time and has now become a collector's piece with a price tag reaching around $1.5 million, a vehicle that combines power, size, and exclusivity in a way that very few cars can. And then there is the Mercedes-Benz G63 6x6, an absolutely massive 6-wheeled machine designed to dominate any terrain, a vehicle that looks more like military equipment than something you would drive on the street, and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Dan's garage is not limited to street legal vehicles, because when you live this kind of lifestyle, rules become optional. He owns a high-performance racing dune buggy valued at around $170,000, one of the fastest ever built, equipped with a roll cage for safety and powered by a 1600 horsepower engine, twin turbocharged, running on E85 fuel, a machine built purely for thrill and chaos. Even though it only seats 2 people, it delivers an experience that most cars simply cannot. His lifestyle is not limited to land, because Dan Bilzerian also owns his own private jet, and this is where mobility meets luxury. He owns a 1988 Gulfstream, for a private jet built in 1987, originally owned by a major corporation and now part of his personal fleet. There are only a limited number of these jets in the world, making it both rare and valuable. Even on the used market, these jets sell for at least $5 million, and for Dan it is just another tool, a way to move between cities, between parties, between experiences without ever slowing down. He even once joked about it publicly, saying that when he told his father he bought the jet, his father responded by saying that at his age he already had 3, a reminder that wealth in this family runs deep. But beyond cars and jets, Dan Bilzerian has another passion, one that has also added to his controversial image: guns. He is known for owning a massive collection, including semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons, along with rare vintage pistols, a collection worth close to $1 million. And while for some people this might seem extreme, for Dan it is just another part of his identity, another symbol of power, control, and freedom. However, this passion has not come without risk. In 2015 his home was targeted by burglars who specifically tried to access his gun collection, but security systems were in place and the attempt failed. The intruders left empty-handed, and Dan responded in the only way he knows how, by posting a photo online featuring weapons and ammunition with a message that made it very clear that his home was not an easy target. This is where the controversy around him grows even stronger, because many people believe that he glamorizes this lifestyle that he pushes the limits, that he lives in a way that most people would never consider, and yet that is exactly what keeps people watching, because Dan Bilzerian is not trying to be relatable, he is trying to be larger than life, a symbol of extreme wealth, risk and freedom, and whether you agree with it or not, it is impossible to ignore.